Hi, this is Professor Conti Borders. I'm recording this message for BMGT 495, and I wanted to go over the financial analysis because I see that folks are having a lot of concern and a lot of problems in moving forward with this assignment. So I want to do two things in this very short recording. The first is to go over the format and what you should be including, and the second is to talk about the content. So let's start with the format. First of all, you'll see if you go into the project descriptions, which is under the syllabus area in Leo, you'll see that the paper has, I believe there are, let me go through this. There are 5 different sections, and really there would be 6. So your initial section, as you see here, is your introduction. Your introduction is your overview. It is what you intend to cover in the body of the paper. And then you are going to have 4 different specific sections that are financial in nature. One is going to be the summary of operations of the company that you have selected. And that summary of operations includes a review of net sales over the past 3 years, gross margin over the past 3 years, operating margin over the past 3 years, income before taxes over the last 3 years, and net income over the last 3 years. So in this instance, you are going to, for the company you select, you are going to get these figures. You need to go out and do the research that identifies what were their net sales for the last 3 years, what was their operating income over the last 3 years. So each of these different areas you are going to get these numbers. And then once you have these numbers, this section here that says Summary of Operations Data Assessment and Interpretation means you need to interpret the actual numbers. You need to look at the data and say, what does that mean from a strategic perspective? Can they afford to move forward with some type of strategic plan? Are they in a position where they've lost money? And why did they lose money? What was the underlying reason for that? So this last section, summary of operations, simply means look at the data and explain it. What does it mean? So let me use summary of operations, and before we go any further, I want to flip over to a paper that had been done some time ago for another class, and I want you to just be able to see this. So here you'll see that the summary of operations, they've said the total revenues increased from 10.7 billion to 11.2 billion. This was over a 3-year period, and it was a 5.1% increase from 2012. After the cost of goods were deducted, it showed that the gross profit increased 3.55%. And they go on to talk about some other things, the operating margins, to explain what happened to the numbers, not just what they were, but did they go up? Did they go down? And ultimately, this discussion here, as I'm scrolling through it, and you'll see I noted it was a very strong discussion, they talked about what did the meaning of the numbers. And here it is. This person, when they were discussing it, said, if you assess and interpret the operations data, it reveals that the numbers were consistent with the business fluctuations that were associated with mergers. In other words, this company experienced mergers during that time. And so what they saw was that the dollar signs, or the revenue and the net income were associated with the fluctuation in merger. It also means that they have enough money, noted here, to be able to offset the merger and restructuring charges. Now, the reason why I flipped over to that is because I wanted you to see what you are supposed to be doing with this. It's not just about presenting the numbers, but what do the numbers mean? So if you go into the second section, financial position, you will identify what are their working capital numbers for the last 3 years. What's their net property, plant, and equipment, total assets, long-term assets, stockholders' equity. And once you have this information, this gives a good idea of their financial position. Do they have working capital? Do they have long-term assets? And if they have long-term assets, what does that mean? What does having long-term assets mean for the company, particularly if you have recommended or you have seen that there are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which you would have reviewed as a part of your mission and vision paper. You would have looked at that. Well, let me take that back. You looked at the mission and vision, but you are assessing more of the company. And so you've had an opportunity to, in our discussions, learn and understand how to do strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So as a part of this analysis, you have to understand what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. That's why I asked you to continue to work on the same company you worked on for your mission and vision statement, because you will have at least researched that. And when you were researching the challenges, when you were discussing that paper, you had to research their challenges, and that helped you understand their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So for this company, what does their working capital, their assets, their long-term assets, what does that mean? This financial position data assessment interpretation, again, is not just putting the numbers on paper, but saying, what do those numbers mean? You'll also need to get ratios for the company. So you'll have liquidity, leverage, profitability, efficiency. And then a historical review allows you to look at two of their major competitors. So for example, if I were doing H.H. Gregg, which is not one of the ones you're assigned for that you can pick, but if I chose H.H. Gregg, I may say, what is it about that particular company? Who are their major competitors? Well, for me, it would be Best Buy and Amazon. So I need to go out and find out what's going on with Best Buy and Amazon. What are some of their relevant financial performance? I may pick net sales, I may pick working capital and liquidity, and I may compare to say, how is H.H. Gregg doing in comparison to Best Buy and to Amazon? I'll compare it to the industry, the electronics industry, since I'm focused on H.H. Gregg, retail electronics. And if I see any supplemental data that seems important, I may talk to it. And again, you will use that data to then actually write an analysis. What does the data mean? So I think what people are getting stuck on is that we haven't covered this in class, but we won't cover this because remember, this is a capstone class. And so part of being a capstone class, excuse me, is that you have to go back to classes you took previously. So we won't cover how do you calculate net sales and gross margin or working capital. That is all information that you've either gotten in past classes, well, you should have gotten in past classes, and if not, since this is a capstone, you have to go back and research that information. But all of this information comes together so that you're able to actually write a good summary of the financial perspective of the company that you selected, where they are today in terms of operations, financial position, and their financial ratios, and historically. And that puts you in a position to be able to say what they should or should not be doing from a strategic perspective. If you look at it and say, well, you know, ideally I could look at H.H. Gregg and say, maybe based on an understanding of their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, I say that they should be in a hold and maintain. I do an IE matrix and I realize they should be in a hold and maintain strategy. Well, do they have the finances to be able to be in a hold and maintain? Do they have the financial position to do that? Or better yet, let's say that my IE matrix says that they should build and grow. Well, do they have the financial wherewithal to be able to build and grow? That's the type of information that you want to look at. That's what you want to analyze, and that's what allows you to come up with a good financial analysis. It is not just about, at this point, putting the numbers on paper, but it's about analyzing the numbers and saying what they mean. I hope that this helps because I realized from the myriad of emails that I was getting that I think people were getting wrapped around this and looking for us to have covered something like this in class. And again, it's a capstone. So capstone classes are not designed to go back and review material you've already reviewed, but rather an opportunity for you to pull that material into this class. And that's what this financial analysis does. So you've done the mission and vision, you're working on the financial analysis, and we'll soon be doing the next assignment, which will allow you to look collectively at an organization and say, what does that organization mean? What does it what is it prepared to do? What can it do? And what can it support? If you have any questions after reviewing this, continue to post questions in via email as well as via the Ask the Professor area in Leo. Thanks. Have a great evening.